I will call the meeting to order. And we have on the gallery view here, we have June playing the part of Alice Brady in the middle of our Brady bunch. Hi, Alice.
How you doing?
We just need Cindy and Bobby to join us and we'll be all set. But I'm Marcia. We're all messed up here. Yeah. Sorry, this just struck me this time that this looks a lot like Brady Bunch. I don't know why. It just it was the format.
Right, it does. Ooh.
I mean, it's never occurred to me on Zoom before, and yet just for some reason it struck me today, just now.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
If we had 2 more, we could have Hollywood Squares.
Yep, that's true too. We could do that as well. Okay, June playing the part of Paul Lynde then. All right. There I go, dating myself again.
Oh, funny.
Since that was the original Hollywood Squares. Well, I think everyone here is probably old enough to remember. Yeah.
My sister
Julie, are you old enough to remember that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We all are. My sister Susan sent me Betty White dabbing today. It was hysterical. I just thought, she's like, I'm like, I am gonna she's gonna be 100 this year. I'm gonna I don't know. I'm just gonna live like Betty White. I think it's just what an icon, huh?
Seriously.
Watch the Golden Girls. Okay, we're on recording, so let's gotta pull up my budget.
Alrighty. So we have somebody joining tonight, right?
Yeah. So for FinCom's information, there was a conflict with Assabet for tonight, and they couldn't make it. So we've rescheduled them to the 24th. So you had on the 24th, you kind of had a, meeting if necessary type thing. So they've been scheduled to the 24th at 7:30. John Annie should be coming to your meeting tonight for CONCOM. I think he was going to discuss his budget, but also CONCOM's, recently expressed need to the board about a conservation agent. I just want to be clear that, I from an operational standpoint, I understand the need, and we can talk about this more when John gets here. But as I talked with the personnel committee earlier tonight, there are several departments. There's a great deal of strain on several departments across town, and some departments actually in the budget request that they submitted, they complied with the directive to level fund their budget, and then they attached summaries about additional needs for their department. So they complied with that. And I just want to be sure that everyone is on a level playing field. So that's just my perspective in all of this. So just to kind of put it out there. But while we're waiting, would you like to look at a couple of graphs? And Assabet did give me their numbers, so we could take a quick look at the expense budget too. You interested, or
Yep,
or do you just want to think?
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Let me share my screen here. So this is it. Yep. Oh, I'm on such a small screen. I apologize. You might not be able to see the whole thing, but it's in your drive. If you just go in your drive, you can see these charts. This first chart, and I showed the board the other night. This shows the history back to FY16 of local property taxes used, and kind of the recent formulaic approach we've used as far as following DOR's tax levy increase guidelines. And the effort here is to try to stabilize the increases year on year without creating spikes or major dips in the tax bills or in the tax rate. So what we're trying to do here, and what we're setting our goal again for, what I'd like to set our goal again for this year in FY22, is to stick with that 2.5%. we could potentially have gone up quite a bit more. We do have excess levy capacity. We could impose more taxes, or more of the tax levy on taxpayers. Now, in my own personal opinion, is a very terrible time to be doing that with COVID, and lots of people need to see relief. So I think keeping with this kind of stable approach to the tax levy is probably the most advisable thing to do during COVID and for the foreseeable future.
So, but
Does anybody-
Margaret,
Yeah.
in that lower right-hand corner, there's that little slide bar. You've got it on 130%.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, let
Yeah,
me
if you
reduce
take
it.
it down, well,
Ooh, not
maybe a
that
little
much.
less, but I kind of wanted to look at that, what's on the bottom.
Okay. So what you've
For
got here,
86,
this is
yeah.
the major point here in this particular graph is obviously the local property taxes used. So by far,
Right.
the biggest revenue source for our budget.
Yeah.
Next would be local receipts. So we have done really, really, really well with local receipts, but I don't know if June wants to weigh in on this. June, if you'd like to weigh in on where we are with local receipts and where we think we're trending.
I can. It's going to have to be off the cuff because I didn't bring the figures with me.
Oh, I can, if you want, I can do it. So we see back here in FY20, local receipts were $1.04 million. In our last recap, the actual local receipts received was just over $870,000. So there is a significant, there's been some significant impacts. I think on the motor vehicle.
I was going to say the majority of the increases in local receipts right now are court fines are big. Interest on investments is down. Our building is down a little bit, but they're still pulling building permits and inspection run permits. So those are still pretty active.
Motor vehicle excise was down, but with the occupancy at Riverbridge, the hope is that's going to stabilize motor vehicle excise.
Yeah. We don't have a ton of local receipts per se that are separated. They're pretty minimal in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Margaret, I'm sorry, my eyes are bit. What is it on top of all of those bars? Is that just a repeat of what's below? What's the wording?
Dollar amount.
Oh,
dollar amounts. Okay.
It's dollar amounts and percent increases.
Okay. So,
all right,
so the colors I'm also bad with too. So
yeah.
Local receipts is which one now?
Local receipts is the dark. Is
third one?
This one right here.
The fourth one, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. The kind of the rust color one.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, my
says you, but yeah.
The next we have state aid. Okay, so here's where we might have a bit of good news this year. Don't know about next, or in FY22. So last year or this year in FY21, we reduced the estimated state aid due to COVID. We had no idea where it was going. The governor just, in his submitted budget a couple of weeks ago, he actually is committing or trying to commit to increasing local aid or state aid by 3.5%, unrestricted general government aid, which would directly benefit the town. The actual cherry sheet numbers came in not too long before the governor issued his FY22 requested budget. And those cherry sheet actuals came in at about $45,000 more than we projected when we had reduced those due to COVID. So I'm feeling confident, and I do want to talk with the team, the administrative finance team a little more, but I'm feeling confident that in FY22, we may have the ability to level fund state aid at our FY21 actual amount. So at about $45,000 more than we projected for
How much was that drop from 19 to 20? That looks like a pretty substantial drop. And
It was a substantial drop, and that's because we no longer, in FY20, we no longer receive
the
Chapter
schools.
70. We have schools.
Right.
That was taken away. So, yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit of, I think that would be a little bit of good news. Then we have, what's this one? Offset receipts. So offset receipts are going to be reduced a little bit, but again, the revenue directly offsets the expenses that we plug into the budget. Board of Health is estimating $10,000 more in transfer station offset receipts. So that's going to be reflected in the transfer station's expense line. Plumbing and gas inspector is reducing his estimated permit fees to $65,000 from $100,000 in FY21. And the electrical inspector is estimating $100,000 again in FY22. So at this point, we're looking at offset receipts of about 200, did I say 285? It's about $285,000. I think that's what we're looking at right now.
So conceptually, I know what you're saying. Is it dollar for dollar with everything except for the transfer station? I mean, we literally pay out the electric and the plumbing. I mean, those are exact dollar for dollar.
Exact dollar for dollar. Yes.
No.
Well, the town retains a small percent.
The plumbing and gas, the town keeps 5%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Electrical, the town keeps 25%. And then with the transfer station, most of the time we get whatever the overage is that they collect.
Right. That's what I was going to get back to. But
so the town does get it, but we do not budget for it.
Right.
So that becomes part of free cash or helps to offset anything that comes in lower than what we estimate.
Right. So the keeping of the portion of the others, is that like administrative cost? I mean, is that like the intent to be administrative costs?
It's to try to capture the administrative work behind,
right.
Particularly with accounting, with the land use clerk, with the inspections clerk actually tracking the payrolls and doing things in the office. So,
yeah, the reason I'm asking is, and I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, I'm done.
I was going to say, the reason I'm asking is if we're talking about staffing levels and we're talking about increase, people being under strain and under stress in different departments, are we keeping enough of that revenue to actually offset our costs, or have we added positions that are now, or added hours that are now no longer actually being covered due to that? And I actually only thought of that at this moment because you said that. I was really going more along with the transfer station number, assuming that number did, help offset. I know that it helps offset the expenses. And I guess now I understand now that it goes to free cash, which is what I was kind of hoping for. But are we covering our administrative costs on the other one, do you think? I have not had a chance to run an analysis, but June and I have talked about this several times. Okay.
I suspect that we are not retaining enough of a percentage.
Yeah, and I would suspect the same thing, given the growth in town government in recent years. It seems to me that that's not being accounted for.
Right.
And not the least of which is, not to put too fine a point on it, but we now have an administrator that also needs to get paid for too, right, Margaret?
Well, I'd share it, but I do think that we need to look at that, Stan. That's a great question. June and I have talked about it. We do have to
think about it, to be honest.
Well, no, I get it. And we're certainly not in dire straits. It's just, it seems like that's what could be a spot where we could try to recoup.
And it's all a matter of cost sharing too. We really have to apply the monies where the costs are being incurred in this particular case. So we do have to look at that.
Right, because we think about that with the public safety money that that comes out of mitigation money, and we directly tie it to the added levels of support that those departments are lending for that. And it seems like that would be a natural continuation down the line with other departments as well, if possible.
Exactly. We need to, yeah, we need to get on it. You know, one of the inspectors, June, is it, I think, plumbing and gas, the town retains 5%. Electrical, the town retains, June, what is it, 15 or 25? 25%. So we've got to really look at that. Yeah.
Well, and but not any of the building?
No, that all goes to the town.
He's salaried.
Yeah, that all goes to, that's all general fund.
Okay, so, but I thought we've talked about the fact that that's, like, I know that we've not looked overly hard at that salary number because we've always said that it's offset by permit fees.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a 1-for-1 or is it I mean, do we know where?
No, we've brought in a lot more building in permits than we have actually paid out for salary.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that hold true with fire inspection, or does that go into Chief Clark's monies?
Well, it goes into general fund.
General funds.
permitting.
I just didn't know. It seems like.
Yep. We did
yeah.
at one time, way back when, we did pay fire inspector also out of offsets. And then it came over as a part-time, full-time position, and the actual permits were just treated as general fund money after that.
I was just curious.
Yeah, so that's general fund. I don't know how long it's been general fund. I know it predates me. Any other questions on the offset receipts? Okay, so next is the reserve receipts. So this is where public safety mitigation comes in, rescue squad or ambulance receipts, and cemetery receipts. Now, I'm not sure. It looks like a lot of the, I think a lot of the Highland Commons public mitigation monies were applied in FY19. I'd have to go back and look at the details on that. It was much, much less in FY20. In FY21, we used public safety mitigation monies to pay off the ladder truck, to offset the base payroll for one firefighter and 2 police officers. So the two lowest paid patrol officers and the lowest paid full-time firefighter EMT. And we also used $100,000 in rescue squad receipts. And I think we're going to probably use $100,000 in those again this year. The amount used from public safety mitigation is going to be significantly less because we are not paying the debt service on a ladder truck anymore. So that's going to be much less.
Now, do you foresee collecting the full mitigation payment? Seems like this might be a year that doesn't happen.
Yes, we do. You're reported. Yes, you do.
Yes,
okay.
we do anticipate it. We know there's always that chance, but if it's not applied, we would have to look elsewhere for those revenues. So that's roughly $210,000 that would be applied to the operating budget. So,
I mean, it's been our stated goal for several years to be paying that towards the operating budget. So are you saying that number has fluctuated dramatically? I mean, that's the first year you're pointing that out as far as.
Yeah, it hadn't been used for payroll. I at least in the recent couple of, or at least in FY20. I don't know if it had prior to that. It might have.
Certainly had been the intent of the finance committee. I don't know if it was one of those, working the magic of the spreadsheet and that it didn't get applied or whatever, but I think it was certainly the intent of the finance committee to have that be the case. But
okay, so and that's that would be the intent moving forward, to continue to do.
What is the actual payments we expect the actual amounts we expect each year?
In FY21, it was a little over $591,000. And in FY22, I think it increases by the CPI. I don't know if it's, I think it increases by the CPI, and which I don't know what that is at this point. So it'd be roughly $600,000 for FY22. We actually, I should say, we'd be receiving that in the spring. We should be receiving that in the early spring this year.
Right.
So
Yeah,
in
it has to be
FY21.
filled out shortly.
Okay. The next category, which is oh, it's a horizontal category. Yeah, okay, wait a minute. There it is. Other revenue sources. This is something the town has not done as a matter of course in every single year. Last year, though, for example, we used where Berlin Memorial School is now requesting capital projects through the operating budget assessment. These are actually one-time costs. You know, they're asking for specific costs for one-time projects. This past year in FY21, we applied prior remaining capital balances to the operating budget funding for those particular items. In FY22, they have a total of $65,000 in capital project requests that would show on our operating budget as Berlin Memorial School's capital assessment. And I would recommend, and Capital Planning Committee actually did recommend funding those from free cash, which is what I would recommend, or from prior capital article balances if there is sufficient, if there are sufficient funds to do that. That's an appropriate one-time use of one-time revenues.
Right. I mean, what would an alternative be?
Raise and appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Right.
What do we suspect that's out there for excess, from previous articles that's left over? Do we?
I don't know,
have
June,
some
do you
firm
have
numbers?
June, do you have a sense right now of what we might be looking at for closing out and capital articles at the annual?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that number. I believe I had already sent it to you.
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
Yeah, you probably did.
Because I do it at the end of the fiscal year back in June.
Okay. All right. So I have that
I
in.
can pull that up right now, but
We can get you that number. If there was a significant amount of more money that was appropriated for the library septic project, for example, and that's not going to be done for annual town meeting, or it's not going to be closed out by annual town meeting, but $100,000 was appropriated for that project, and the bid came in at $47,000. So that's going to be one of those instances where there is a significant amount of money remaining in a prior capital article. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Do you know why that's so little? Did it? Seems like I know that was the low bid, but what were the other bids? I was just curious. It seemed like they ranged from 47, whatever that was, 47.6 up to $91,000. Yeah,
91.
like
when 91 was extremely high.
Yeah.
So it was like 47, and then there was one in the 50s and one in the 60s, and then there was 91,000.
To close out these articles, right, we need a vote at town meeting, right?
Yes, yeah. They'll be closed out to whatever funding sources were used to fund them in the first place.
would you like me to just verbally say?
Yes.
Hang on, I have to move you around on my screen so I can see what I'm doing. Let me see. We have matching grant funds available from the selectmen of $2,870. The town administrator consultant for 2020. Data systems, assessment of computers, $200. We have matching grant funds of $19,000, but that came from originally the public safety. 15,000 was for redesigning the roof at the Berlin Memorial School, which came out of stabilization funds originally.
Oh.
We had sealing the exterior windows and the vents at the school, which came out of the Highland Common capital projects, which is now actually the capital stabilization fund.
Oh, so that can be closed out to the capital stabilization
Yep,
fund.
of
Oh, good.
12,500. We have a dump truck and sander for 3,000, which came from raise and appropriate. We have bus repair maintenance of $600, which came from free cash. And we also have the recreation had received funds for the wellness trail that came in way over budget. So that was said to be able to close that out. And there was 30,000 that came from the Highland Common Cultural and 20,000 was a raise and appropriate.
Oh, wow.
So there is some money there. I mean, it adds up, but it depends on where you want to put, if you want to put it back where it came from.
But the library was free cash?
I believe so. Is that where we took it from? I don't remember.
Wouldn't we put the cultural fund back to the cultural fund though?
That's what we had done in the past. And
Yeah.
the newer articles now that are dated will just go back into the accounts that they came from automatically.
So you're really looking, you're really looking at those that would go back to free cash that you really kind of might be able to
Right, that's
free
why I
up.
was wondering about the septic, if that's where that, since that's the only one that was a real number. No offense, June, but that was the only one that was a real number.
Okay. It works for you.
So in this
The number I
instance,
can wrap my head around rather than these $600 and the $2,000.
What was it that you were asking on the septic? Is
Yes,
that what you said? For the library?
yes. Yeah. And I heartily endorse, by the way, that these should go back to wherever. I mean, that's wherever the money was taken from is where the intent that money be expended and not just shifted to something else. So absolutely should and better go back to where we took it from.
Yeah. In the case of those articles that are being closed out that were funded from Highland Commons Public Safety mitigation, there might be one or two that June mentioned. Those could certainly be used as revenue sources for the operating budget to pay for those baseline payroll costs for those officers and the firefighter EMT.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that might be something that we ought to look at as far as like our free cash guidelines, is that we should have guideline for, or do we? I apologize, I don't think we do. That we don't have percentages set hard and fast for when we expend from each. I know we have percentages that each one is of the money total, but then we don't necessarily say we're going to spend 50% on salaries, or we're going to spend 40% on salaries, or 80% on.
For public safety mitigation?
Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. I think I think the administrative finance team early in the budget cycle last year, we drew up something. We should dig that out and see if we can do that.
So now,
I think that will help.
I have library, 2 articles right now for the library. One is for digging the well, which doesn't look like they've spent anything out of that one yet.
No, and I don't, I based on our discussions with DEP, I think once we get through this septic project, I think that's going to be another one that's closed out.
Okay, so there's 25 there. I don't know off the top of my head where that money came from. And then for the septic, we have, right now, there's 99,000 still in there,
Are you
but we
saying
haven't
don't
paid
have to-
anything.
Oh, sorry, June.
No,
Are you
that's-
saying we don't have to put a new well in at the library?
DEP, DEP, we met with DEP, and there's nothing wrong with the well. There might have been a sense that there was something wrong with the well. I think the bigger concern after our meetings with DEP about the septic system was that if we put in a septic system that required digging a new well, we could end up with worse problems with a well than we have now. Right now, the only requirement is that it be tested. So we have routine testing done on the well, but the well itself is not bad. And DEP made that clear. So what we want to do is we want to try to get through the septic system installation without disrupting the well and make sure that additional work on the well is not going to be required.
That would be nice.
Wouldn't it?
Mm.
It would. John Annie's here. Would you like me to promote him to panelist?
Sure.
All right.
Hi,
Hello, John. Welcome.
thank you. Thank you for allowing me to attend.
Certainly.
Hi, John.
Hi, Margaret. Hi, everybody.
We're gonna just put you right on the hot seat soon. Now that you're up and running here, let's just
Well, okay, so
unless you want a few minutes to get yourself oriented, in which case we can keep talking about free cash and so forth.
I'll pass on more discussion.
They were talking, this could be like the Hollywood Squares.
Well, now we're off. Yeah.
Yeah, we need one more. So Margaret and I had a discussion about, getting together a proposal for the town to hire a conservation agent for the Conservation Commission. And she suggested I, speak with you guys concerning this. Margaret, I had sent you that list of duties.
Mhm. Yep.
So I could screen share that or email it to everybody, or actually probably easier if Margaret emailed it to people, since I don't have everybody's email address. Or I could email it to Stan. What's the best option?
Stan, would you like him to screen share and go through?
For now, I'd like you to screen share, but yes, I would love it if you could forward that to me, John.
Sure. When we're done, I will email it to the Finance Commission.
I'll share it with the group as well, but it would be that might just be the easiest way to go.
Okay. So a little bit of background. There's just a lot of sort of various tasks associated with the Conservation Commission, and a lot of it gets funneled through the chair by necessity, particularly because of the way communications are done. And it gets to be, we're starting to realize that it's just really a part-time job that's required. Carolyn had sort of had enough of it and then turned the head over to me. I'm realizing that this is kind of a large ask for a volunteer. Steve Beard had been did it for a little while, and he's in agreement. So the people that have done this recently that are still on the commission are all in agreement. Most of the area towns that around us have the conservation commissions. I mean, the towns have hired a conservation agent of some sort. So let me looking over. Thinking about some of the things that I do or we do, and then also looking over sort of job postings and everything. So there's a sort of a 2-page list of what some of the duties would be for a conservation agent. The first part deals with actions regarding the Wetland Protection Act and regulations. And then that also potentially any municipal bylaws, because we're also trying to get the town to approve a Berlin wetland bylaw. So, this involves sort of keeping track of things, working with the applicants, educating them about the process, making sure that all the legal issues are followed, the posting of the meetings and notifications of things. There's specific timelines for how soon after a request is received to when you have to hold a hearing or a meeting and then make a decision. You have to, usually these things involve site visits. So you have to coordinate that with the various parties, determine whether you need consultants to weigh in on what the applicants, civil engineers have determined to be the appropriate course of action. You have to, go over all the wetland delineations, understanding that, these are done, whether they need to be rechecked, second opinions. You have to look for, sort of everything involves an alternatives analysis, whether there's, a better plan for the proposed projects to have, less of an impact on the wetlands. Then, you have to make sure all the, the applications are correct. Some of them come quite complete. Some of them are definitely not, and you have to assist some of the applicants with the process. You have to be, understand and go over site plans. You have to cross tabulate those with, other databases, wetlands databases, and assessors maps and whatnot. Coordinate with other boards and committees, if there's any issues that are coming up, making sure that all the legal and technical issues are dealt with. Then of course you have to participate in the hearings, the meetings, appointments, make sure all the data that you've collected is presented in a coherent fashion so that it can be, digested by the various commission members, and debate can be held between the commission and the applicants. That you take a vote, and then there's all the forms, they have to be filled out, copied, delivered. A DEP needs to be notified. Everything needs to go by certified mail or hand delivering. And again, all according to various timelines and regulations. After project is approved, there's site monitoring to ensure compliance, making sure that all for instance, the erosion controls are intact and in place where they're supposed to be. There could be violations, sometimes accidental, sometimes not. You have to determine if any mitigation needs to be made, and if an enforcement order has to be implemented, whether, a stop work order has to be done. You might have to coordinate with the boards, commissions, the inspector's office, develop mitigation plans, hire consultants. There might be neighbors or other people that are involved in complaining about how things are going. And then, you make sure all the money flows in the right direction too. Something that June knows that I struggle with. Although all the checks have been turned over. So that's all just Wetlands Protection Act stuff. Then there's, making sure, as we have more development in town, a lot of these involve stormwater management structures. You have to make sure that these are still functioning, that there hasn't been a breach. They don't need to be redone. That there was an occurrence of that about 1.5 years ago. It required an effort by the developer to sort of reestablish the structure. This is separate from all the stuff that was going on at the solar farm. There are quite a lot of files. They go back years. They need constant curating and management. We review all, the Concom reviews all building permits to make sure there's no wetlands issues that come up. Sometimes they do. You have to do site visits, sort of work with the the person to see if any, RDAs or NOIs need to be filed, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's all the open space. There's somebody that's, sort of a land steward, making sure that, the conservation values and natural resources are maintained properly, that, people aren't misusing the areas, that any troubles that occur get dealt with, keeping an eye on the trails, investigating concerns and complaints, rectifying those, make sure the trails are in good shape, do the trails need to repair, cleanup, better signage, et cetera. And then, just working with the public as a, liaison and educator regarding conservation land, maybe, working with local groups on sort of walks and whatnot. Then there's, there's the issue of identifying land for purchase and conservation, finding funding opportunities for the acquisition of land for conservation. There's, a related thing is the development of conservation restrictions on land. So in these cases, the land remains in the hands of the property owner, but the town purchases a conservation restriction so that the land remains in its current state. For instance, an agricultural state, or that the part of the land will remain in a wooded state, or sort of an open space state. And finding funding for that. There's all fun stuff like annual reports and managing the money and the budget. And a big thing that basically I don't have time for, I don't think anybody in the commission really has had time for, is identifying and applying for grants and other funding opportunities. Occasionally we're able to tap into Sudbury Valley trustees for help with this. And they've been great, but they have 30 towns that they work with. So, I mean, there are certainly other grant opportunities or funding opportunities that we're probably not making use of. Oh yes, and taking the minutes, sort of a hot potato for us. I mean, Louise is kind enough to do it most of the time, but she can't always do it. There's a lot of just, and this is one of those things where you can't really delegate it, because you don't really want more than one person managing the email and mail and telephone, but it all sort of funnels through. There's just a lot of questions that come up. People about this, that, and the other thing, geocaching, trespassing, motorized vehicles. Can I do this? Can I do that? How do I go about this? This property, what are your thoughts about the wetlands, etc. Then, there's a good role for a liaison and educator of the public regarding all sorts of stuff like the Wetlands Protection Act and recreational conservation stuff. Oh, and then there's the website. They update and curate the website. It's starting to creak a little bit. There are broken links, things that need to be updated, but like I have not found anyone on the commission that's able to sort of take this on as a project. And then, the open space and recreation plan and stuff like that. So that's sort of just an example of the duties that a conservation agent would engage in.
Big list.
Yeah. So it would, as I was speaking with Margaret, it was sort of looking for like a roughly 19-hour position. That brings it off the benefits, drops it below the benefits thing. Some of these conservation agents work for more than one town.
I was going to say, is there any way to realize any kind of economy of scale with that?
Maybe. When Carol and I were speaking with Tim, he said he would ask around to see if any other towns are looking. When I recently spoke with the conservation agent in Northborough, me and McDonald had a nice conversation with her about everything. By the way, Margaret, did you know that Northborough's town hall was completely devastated by COVID-19? You're muted, but yeah, everybody, the town hall had to be cleared out.
No, I'm not surprised, but
yeah.
I did not hear that. Wow.
Yeah, well, one of the many things me and I talked about last week. a lot of the towns already have conservation agents. They do turnover to some degree. The only one we could identify that doesn't is Boylston, which, so, I could potentially reach out to them and see if they're interested in it or not. I don't really interact with their conservation commission that much. Maybe once or twice over the last few years, but not very often. But there might be some other towns that are around that are looking for some.
Well, I was wondering more in the lines of if there was an existing town, if there was a town that already had an existing agent, if they were looking to pick up duties rather than reinventing with a town that doesn't have one at all.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, so for instance, the model there would be somebody who's hired part-time at a local town and looking for another part-time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which probably then gets into benefits, and the two towns would have to split them, and or whatever. But
yeah, it would get into sharing the indirect costs. The other thought I had, John, after we talked, was reaching out to Central Mass Regional Planning Commission to see if, because they have many, many resources. They may even have access to independent conservation agents who would serve as vendors to the town, so through a contracted service. So I could find out from CMRPC what towns in the region have conservation agents, if there's any capacity to share. And I also have, I could reach out on, to my colleagues further out across the state to ask the same questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. Not sure a vendor would work just because of the learning curve involving, how any particular town is laid out, works, and what their local issues are.
Mm-hmm.
It would be better to have somebody sort of settled in, to sort of learn how things, work around here, and just who the characters are and what the land concerns are, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Mary.
Two questions for you, John. One is, has anybody on the Conservation Commission attempted to create the kind of thing that Margaret's done in the town right now, where we have a form, right? There's a standard process that we use over and over again. And so we create a form and say, when you're gonna walk through this process, just like the budget. So we have a request form. We've got now a request form for what a department or what a particular function in the town wants to do. And when I looked at your list, it seemed to me that that like the public coming in with a particular question, or just what are the wetland law requirements that the town, have we done any attempt to systematically put together some forms, some paperwork, some of that kind of thing that would take hours out of your day, for example, as the chair of the commission, so that you're not continually reinventing the wheels. And then as part of that, Berlin isn't that large of a town, and we know where wetlands are mostly, I think. So it seems to me, no, we don't. You're shaking your head. Okay, well, let me put that aside. But on the part I talked about, could somebody do some project work sort of thing to create some systems within the work that the commission does, so that if the email comes in and says, what do I do about X, you say, here's a little paragraph that we wrote that tells you that.
We do on the website. There is a like a sheet for NOI applications and stuff like that. That I actually updated in 2020 at some point. To sort of make sure that it meets criteria. But we get questions anyway. This
of
morning,
course.
So, and then the variety and the amount of detail, I think you wouldn't be able to anticipate all the questions and have automatic stuff. I don't think you could write enough boilerplate responses to all of the various questions. Some stuff comes up that you just don't even you don't even expect.
No,
Um,
I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
So like so that we do have a you know, a checklist for the NOI process, which is, you know, one of the major wetland things, but you know, people still ask. I mean, today a guy that works for a civil engineering firm had a question, and then last week I was helping Shannon with Boundless Adventures on an RDA, making, you know, because I think that she was tasked with doing it, keeping the budget low, so she's been asking for advice and so how to make this happen appropriately. So you just never know. There's just so many, you know, some of it's just land requests, you know, what about this, what about that? It'd be very hard to develop like a push button template response option tree thing.
So John and or Margaret, none of this falls under the showboat, right? None of this falls under Board of Health, and it's
No,
completely
this is,
separate.
yeah, this is completely separate. This is conservation. Yeah, this is under the conservation's jurisdiction.
I have a question. Hi, John. I'm
Hi.
relatively new to living here and to FinCom, so I hope this makes sense. But I've had to like work on jobs and hiring people before, but looking at, you have like a very big list of things that you need done. Is it possible to chunk it by things that you have to do as a town, like legally, and why you have to do it? Because you said like a chunk of it applies to the wetlands, which I'm assuming is the state level requirements for following wetlands.
Right. So the weird thing about what we do is there is a law that a bunch of volunteers are tasked with enforcing, interpreting and enforcing. It's a little strange.
Yeah, now is that the state put that on the conservation?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you oversee that one. That's important to know that when you're talking about this, that these tasks come under
Yeah,
legal
Sort of like an unfunded mandate, yes.
Yeah, but then you also have like the website, which I know I brought this up at a coffee talk. If we could maybe like with the town, get away for people who want to do partial volunteering, like the website task doesn't necessarily have to be the agent, but the wetlands, but like the really like the meat of this thing, like dealing with the wetlands and with people being in compliance and with developing. Is that making sense?
A little bit. I mean, you know, the great thing about volunteers is that it's a cool way to get involved. The flip side of that though is it's sort of like comes in fits and spurts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little more difficult to assess that over the last 11 months, but you know, getting, you know, sometimes you just need somebody whose duty it is to manage something, you know, that, you know, and to make sure that, you know, that things get done the way they're supposed to do, to be done. I mean, you know, if someone could, you know, a volunteer could come in and sort of redo the website, that'd be great. But again, they may need to do it again in a few months because something has changed or something went dead, you know. You know, I would like to fix the website, but I don't know anything about web design, so I'd have to teach myself how to do it. And I have a job.
Website maintenance is an area we are struggling townwide. And, you know, part of it is due to staff having other priorities than, you know, doing social media, updating their websites, you know, and things like that. So my question is, John, I'll ask the question to you, is might it be possible to look at dividing up some of these tasks? So we have a land use clerk here. I mean, she's currently 24 hours a week, but she's a land use clerk. I mean, would it be possible to, you know, potentially look at giving her some of these tasks. Obviously, there might be another couple of hours involved in that each week, but giving her some of the basic office coverage tasks and that would be at a lesser hourly rate than a conservation agent may be hired for.
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of screening that needs to be done to determine, like, so you can, you know, monitor an email or phone call or mail, but then you have to be able to interpret it. So it, you know, that might just be a lot of forwarding, you know, what you know, because a lot of the stuff you sort of need to interpret what's going on and respond appropriately. I mean, you know, it does require a certain level of knowledge about what's.
Yeah. Right.
What kind of an educational background does a person need for this? I mean, is it something you require?
If you, yeah, I mean, so right, they don't need a PhD. Basically, it's a bachelor's in environmental science or the equivalent. That's how it's usually listed in the job. You know, the whatever you call them, the job postings.
Mhm.
So it's a bachelor's in environmental science or the equivalent. So they don't. Master's is nice, but you don't need it. They certainly don't need a PhD. They don't need to be lawyers, you know, but they have to be understand. And some of it is just you've just got to learn stuff. You know, you have to continue to be educated, to educate yourself and to learn how these things work. So.
June, you had your hand up. There she is.
Yeah, a number of years back when the land use clerk was actually developed, that was one of the reasons why it was there, was for conservation, ZBA, and also for planning board for any type of clerical stuff. And at that point in time, I know conservation said it wasn't needed. So I just want to throw that out because originally it was, you know, to have it so that the few hours that were needed for clerical, you know, I'm going to say it was at least 5 years ago now, if not a little bit more than that. So
Yeah.
just to see what the actual position could grow into versus all of a sudden just jumping into almost a full-time person.
Well, no, it's not. It's less than half-time, but I think my response to the other part of your comment question is that some of that was political. And that's all I have to say.
That what?
Why?
Some of that was political.
Well spoken.
No, and I
John.
realize that, but there was somebody there available and it was told, no, absolutely not. We didn't want it. So.
Yeah.
Janet.
Do we still have this land use clerk?
Yeah, Leanne is our land use clerk. She's actually our inspections clerk, and she's
okay. I didn't realize she had one in the same, like, was one in the same person. So my next question is, so she's doing ZBA notes because I was just at their meeting, and she's doing building inspection. So my question is, how many hours a week does Leanne work? Does she
24.
want more hours? Can we give her more hours? Does she have enough work to keep her busy? And is this something that we should roll? Because I was going to say the same thing that June was. This was offered to conservation, you know, years back. They didn't want it. I don't know why. I'm not getting involved in the politics. I just remember the statement of, we don't need somebody else, which was fine. That was their right. Now they do. We have this person. Is that person able to do this? Because here's my concern. Where is the money coming from? I'm so concerned about adding another salary in, knowing we have police in negotiation, and then moving that to fire negotiation. And I don't know. I just don't think this is a good time to be adding another salary when we might have somebody that is already in a position that can take up some of this slack. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying there isn't a need, because I've been going to many of their meetings, and I've actually been going to quite a few meetings, and I think that there's probably a lot of committees that are probably in the same vote as this one particular one when something comes up of that's out of the norm that a committee would need to be attending to, if I'm making myself clear enough. I'm just saying, I'm just asking, not saying I can see where there is a need, but is there some place where we already have someone that we could maybe groom into what they might need more?
I want to go back to Julie's questions to you, John, because they interested me, and I recalled, I had in the back of my head hearing that the conservation commissions have some special legal powers. I just took a quick look at online at what they are, and it's the issuing of permits, plus the ability to accept gifts of land or money with the approval of the select board without going to town meeting and so on. So there's actually real power in the hands of the Conservation Commission. So it's a pretty serious function that the town has. And then as I listened to my colleagues here on the Finance Committee, just to first of all acknowledge, John, you do have a real issue with trying to get the things done that are mandated under state law, and they are really important things. And I know the town does have quite a bit of open land and natural resources that are relevant here. I think what I'm hearing from the others, and particularly from what Julie said, is that if we take that list you've got and kind of organize it, and those core functions that are mandated under state law, and take a look at those, and then look at the things that are kind of administrative that just keep you guys running, we might be able to tackle it on the short run. This year under the pandemic, I think it's a hard year to go in and say we want to create a position, or we want to add hours to somebody else for all of the obvious reasons. Yet I think what you're asking us for is really it isn't trivial, and I see the need. But I'd recommend that maybe if you kind of sharpen your pencil on the message, that we might do better on figuring out a way, short term and maybe longer term, to help out the commission. From the finance perspective, is how could we fund the things that want to be done? And I like what I'm hearing about. Is there any way we can share with another town? My question to you on forms and that sort of thing is that if we have a full-time conservation agent in a larger town nearby, have they developed systems that they'd be willing to give us? That how they handle intake. Is there something we can learn from somebody else to make it easier in the short term, while we look for the right way and the right time to give the kind of support that is necessary? Because looking at the legal functions, that we need to do this right. The work needs to be done with attention to what's required.
With regard to your last comment, I think I can ask again. These people. My sense is that I'm simply just doing what they're doing.
Sorry, you're doing what? Who's doing? What the other towns might be doing?
What the conservation? I'm doing what the conservation agent is doing.
Yeah. Okay.
With respect to funding, we can use permit fees to help support the salary of an agent. It would be insufficient to cover the salary, but it would be an offset. If the municipal wetland bylaw passes, we could add some fees to things to also help support the position. They couldn't be very high fees. They would not pay for the position, but they do help offset to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thumbnail sense, John, of how much the offset is? Would it be 20%? Would it be, do you have any sense of that?
Oh, it would be less than 20%. June would know too. I mean, it would sort of depend on how much extra fees we charged. You know, so if you know, the wetland bylaw would allow us to, so if somebody's putting in an NOI, there's a formula for fees already. So if somebody submits an NOI, you know, some of it goes to the state, some of it goes to us. It goes into a special account, which is very specific about what it can be used for.
This is your permitting process. Your NOI is notice of intent is a permitting process.
Yeah, the wetlands
Yes.
can only be spent on wetlands only. It's very specific as far as what the money could be used for if we adopted to have that actual.
Right.
Oh.
June, in that paper you sent me about 6 months ago, there was a section in there regarding using that money to pay for an agent administrator.
Would, but it has to be for wetlands. It can't be for general office. It has to be, the way that it was written, I believe, is just for wetlands.
Oh, yeah, but there's enough, I mean, permitting action that would, in site visits and whatnot, that would cover that.
Yeah, do we have a sense for what the opposition would pay, or what these 19 hours will we be looking at for a dollar amount?
I think
Right.
that the job postings are in the range of 25 to 30 bucks an hour.
Okay.
But, you know, but that was my sense from reading over maybe 10 job postings. Some Margaret gave me and some Mia gave me.
Yeah, I gathered some for you. John, do you, is it the 19 hours, the 19 hours that you're suggesting, is that based on you putting in 19 hours currently a week on this?
Yeah, I was afraid you're going to ask that. You know, so I have not been keeping track of my hours, but I think I'm pretty sure on busy weeks I'll put that much time in. You know, between everything and the site visits and the running around. You know, some of it's a little more complicated this time of year, but you know, I put in a lot of work to make sure that the meetings go well. And you know, somebody's got to sort of draw up all these forms and fill them out and sign them and, you know, get them distributed and stuff like that. So, and then, you know, sometimes it's less than that. I mean, it's always more on the week we have a commission meeting. But like I said, there's stuff I'm not getting to. I've thrown up my hands on things like grant applications. I just, you know, or the website management, or, you know, I rely on Walter at this point just to wander around town and find stuff at trails, or, you know, volunteers will point stuff out. You know, there's things that I don't include, like trail clearing. I didn't put that in job description. So I don't know. Some of that stuff I do, it wouldn't be the conservation agent's duties anyway. So I don't know. I just know I spend a lot of time. There's stuff I don't get to. Like another thing we don't get to, which we really ought to, but you know, is, you know, once a project starts, is stopping in and just making sure that they're like doing okay. You know, like that they'll, you know, I'll do drive-bys sometimes on my bicycle, make sure that looks like all the erosion control barriers in place, like stuff like that. But, you know, you know, it'd be useful to go out there and, you know, have like weekly visits to make sure that they're actually following the rules that we mandated. But it gets to be, you know, from my perspective, it's kind of absurd after a while that this just too much. It's just too much. So, and you know, people do. I mean, I get other commission members do stuff, but you know, most of the ones that they all work, or most of them work. And some people, one can't be wandering around doing stuff like that, and the other one does, but doesn't do other stuff. So we're busy.
All right, well, I certainly think we see the need for this, John. I think we just struggle with how to pay for it. So
Yeah,
as with everything else.
Yeah. June has her hand raised.
June, need to unmute there, dear. There you are.
Just for fun, I went back and looked, and wetlands in 18 brought in $12.50 19, about 3,000. Last year it was about 2,600, and this year so far it's only $512. So we're not talking about a lot of money available to be used there, but.
No. I mean, I like I mentioned, we could supplement it to some degree with some extra fees and stuff like that, but it's not gonna, it's
Not gonna pay for
definitely
it.
not gonna pay for it.
Hmm.
Thanks, June.
All righty. Well, does anyone else have any more questions for John? I think I've got the picture.
I will continue. Yeah, I know Mary has asked, and John, if you could do, just do this exercise that Mary has requested, with kind of delineating the statutory responsibilities from the administrative. I certainly can reach out to CMRPC, to see what's out there. I have some other thoughts, but as far as other funding sources, but nothing that I'm going to share, because they're very preliminary thoughts, and I don't know if there's any basis for them. So that's it. I'll keep them to myself.
Margaret, I just want to credit that it was Julie's idea. I said it louder. So
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie and
that's all right.
Mary.
I just want to make that really, really clear. And the other thing, John, when you send that list out to Stan and he sends it to us, I'm happy to take a crack at editing, because, I'm happy to do some writing and to give a cut to the kind of thing that I'm thinking about, which is important to have different buckets. The thing that Julie said, and I can take a crack at it because you're already putting in your 20 hours. And I'm not sure it would be I'm not sure it's the same vision you would have, but it might give you an idea of what I see as valuable there.
Mary, that would be tremendously helpful. Yeah, I cobbled that together after my discussion with Margaret last week.
After a beer, right? You had it after a beer?
No. I read through the job. I spoke with Margaret, I spoke with Mia, I read through the job postings that Mia gave me, the ones that Margaret gave me, and then I just looked, I thought back about all the stuff I'm doing that doesn't involve chainsaws, and I just drew up the list. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate that I couldn't agree more with Julie and Mary. And before Julie spoke, I was thinking on the same lines, but she did it much more eloquently than myself. So thank you for speaking up. But I do see a need, because I've been coming to those meetings. I think we just all need to get on the same page and figure out if and when we're going to be able to fund something like this.
Yeah, no, and that's really important. And, frankly, I think the model does vary a lot from town to town. Mm-hmm. Like Mia is employed full-time at Northborough, but she also does other stuff. She's has expertise in Wetland Protection Act and environmental stuff, but she does other stuff. But then, Paxton reached out to her, and she just goes over there 4 hours a week just to sort of like make sure they're not screwing things up. So I think it's, so this is one person who has a full-time job and then a 4-hour part-time gig. It's all over the place. I know that Rebecca is just part-time over in Bolton. But I don't know. Any amount would be useful. But there has to be sort of a critical investment. So part of is just knowing what's going on around here, and that helps too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly lends itself to the land clerk use. I mean, seeing how they already have their fingers in some of these pieces, and I do know Leanne, and I know she's.
Oh, Leanne's great.
She talks about how busy she is, and I don't know if she would be willing to add hours, but
I'm not sure. I mean, I think she watches little children for a while too.
Exactly.
There are several departments that are under a lot of strain.
Yep.
Just kind of bundling it all up. But
well, thank you very much. I will immediately email my list to Stan via the. Actually, no, I think I have your email in one of those. So I'll just email it to Stan, and then Stan, you can send it to
Yep.
whomever.
Yep.
All right.
Very
Well,
good.
thanks very much, guys.
Hey,
All right,
you
Jen,
for
thank
inviting
you.
me.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks, John.
Good night.
Good night.
All righty. Well, we're at almost 10 to 9. What else do we got?
Cupcakes.
I won't bother. You can look in the drive for, you know, at the other
Okay, 'cause we-
graphs and the numbers that have been plugged into the expense sheet. Am I muted?
Yes, exactly. We have,
No,
do
you're
we have
not.
to sing or do
Oh,
we, what do
Go
we?
ahead, Stan. Go ahead.
Someone's not paying any attention down there in the
I
Mrs.
know.
Brady time slot down there.
She's reading her happy birthday messages coming in.
Oh, is that what it is?
On her
No,
systems.
I'm trying to like look at the notes I took from Mike's Earth Removal Committee meeting, which I see them also in the same need as FinCom. And I'm looking at Leanne's position and I'm thinking, we have all these committees that need like maybe, you know, a part-time person in like, can you like, is it smart to take all of like say 6 committees and roll them all into one ball and have a, you know,
See, we've been really fortunate over the last, I'm going to say 10 years or so, because we've had great volunteers, as you all are, which thank you very much. But unfortunately, there seems to be just so much work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mandatory stuff now, and it's great as long as you have the volunteers and the people that are willing to, you know, give their time. It's just
Yeah.
when you
The
don't.
state regulations, and John just gave a sampling from Concom, but the state regulations on every single department have become so burdensome and they're ever changing, and it's just
Right. Finding one person to keep up on all of it might be, unfortunately, it's probably a big ask.
and then I'm thinking, where's the money going to come from? That's my other, and I'm not, I mean, I'm just, I don't know. I just don't know where we're going to find. He said, I did the math. Did anybody else do the math? It's like $25,000 to $35,000 for a 20-hour position. I mean, where are we?
19, not over 20, because then it's benefit.
Well, I meant, yes, excuse me. It was, I did it times 19, but I'm just saying, do we even have somebody that's already working, making that kind of money? And do we take somebody that's already working if they choose to want more hours? And like, you know, how do you, if you've got somebody working that's just, and I don't mean this to sound like just a clerk, but I liken it to, okay, my world, a nurse's aide, an LPN, and an RN. There you've got 3 different people in healthcare. It's clearly 3 different levels of a pay scale. How do you roll all of this into one position when maybe what John needs is a pay scale of $30 an hour, but somebody else might only need a $15 an hour pay scale? So
All right. And
this is what I was doing on my phone while you're all talking. It's
well,
like,
that's where the list of duties comes in, as far as what's administrative and what's technical and what's.
Jumped on your bandwagon of how brilliant that was, because I'm like, okay, I'm writing lawyer. Well, Mary's a lawyer. We could ask her a few questions in that area.
Well, but then
there's the IT piece. I'm like, okay, Julie's into IT. She knows a little bit about web.
I won't do web. I actually work with somebody who does the web design. And
Oh, okay. I knew you had said something, but I was like,
I won't do it because I know how much work it is.
Well, I'm married to a web designer, but anyway, so yes.
So you know it's.
So there was like all of these things was going through my head, and then you two started. So kudos.
Oh.
Well, and I think the other thing to keep in mind is that when you get bogged down in a lot of this administrative stuff, it tends to color your vision of the entire
Yeah.
job.
Right.
And I think if those 4 or 5 hours of clerical were pulled out of this, and the one thing that I kind of struck me was when you talked about and just taking the minutes, that's a hot potato, and yep, I get that. And if you, I really do think that you take the 4 or 5 hours of clerical out of this, and it makes it just so much more manageable. And I think that is something that can be picked up. And I don't know, again, I don't know if Leanne has the time, but it certainly seems like a natural extension of that job. But we've all talked about it. There's a certain pay range for certain portions of this job, and a certain pay range for another portion of this job, and a certain pay range for the top end, really thought-provoking legal aspects of this. And so yeah, it needs to be broken up.
That's what I'm thinking. You can't really take a clerical job and roll it into a lawyer job.
Correct.
I mean, it's like,
I don't think, yeah.
People have tried, Janet. People have definitely tried.
well,
So anyway, I just want to say thank you to our birthday girl for showing up tonight,
Yeah.
being part of our meeting.
Happy
Still
birthday,
talking.
Janet.
Do you want us to sing? Want us to sing?
I know I haven't finished my spiel yet. I was at ZBA and they're utilizing a lawyer, I think tonight that was above and beyond what their normal capacity was. I didn't hear the whole thing, but I got gist of comments of, are we leaving this open? Well, blah, 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 blah. And she went above and beyond. And I'm thinking, here we're in. And then I listened to earth removal from Mike the other night, and they're clearly got a lot going on in that. And then you've got
Planning board. Planning board has no planner.
Nope. And then you've got the bylaws that conservation wants to do, which, that's another whole thing. So everybody's very busy. Anyways, done.
And there is pent up demand, and if you go through the budget requests from the various departments, you'll see that some departments did attach summaries about need for additional staffing hours. It's just a reflection of the workload that we've got. So Concom's not alone. None of us are. So
the bottom line for this department is show me the money.
That's right.
Where's it coming from?
And that's FinCom's job. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Janet. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
attending.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
I didn't get any muffins to taste on your behalf, so apparently none were.
I know. I thought of it
made.
tonight.
There's one last thing I just want to mention. So this is a negotiations year. Oh gosh, I feel like I think I mentioned this at personnel right before FinCom. And so we're negotiating a police contract and a fire contract. This year we have a contingency line that we created due to COVID. June and the administrative finance team and I are discussing a possible request to continue this contingency line in kind of a different context as a payroll contingency for contract negotiations in part. I mean, there might be a couple of COVID parts still because we still are dealing with COVID, but there's got to be a mechanism that the contracts can be funded. And this contingency line might be an appropriate way to do that. So I just wanted to put it out there now, and we can talk with FinCom more about that later.
Yeah, I would have some questions about that, but now I'm cooked.
Yeah, because I actually saw a lot of towns that's the way that they handle a lot of the contracts versus just giving it to the department heads.
I would not
budget. And now that they know what's there. So it's one of those things where a lot of the towns I noticed were doing it as far as a I can't remember exactly how they called it, but it was to cover any type of contracts, not only with like union contracts, but if they were doing employment contracts or new hire contracts, things like that. So
how are people gonna handle the, like, we are expecting town employees to be level funded this year?
Well, we're asking for 2% COLA. I will be
Right.
defending that request. Yeah.
I understand that. But my question is, in most union contracts that I've been involved in, there's the cost of living as well as the step raises.
Yeah.
And is it really fair that the unions get both when we're telling our town employees that they're going to get a COLA and level fund? I'm having a hard time drinking that Kool-Aid. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I understand your point, and that is a point of negotiation. So, loud and clear.
But our hands are really tied in that, as I understand it. Am I right?
Maybe.
I guess I need some clarification on that.
Maybe not. I think everything is subject to well, most things are subject to negotiation.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Good to know. Say, Margaret, I know you're trying to wrap up there, Stan, and Margaret, you sent an email out from, who is this from? Assabet. Something about
The
ESSER 2 funds and blah,
yes,
blah.
yes.
Yeah, should we talk, is there anything to talk about or just ignore it or what?
Okay, so I should at least put it out there because I think Assabet will be talking with you about it. They received COVID-related grants, ESSER funding. It was COVID-related, and this year, I think it carries year to year, but this year, because of COVID, they are allowing a portion of ESSER funds to be used to reduce minimum local contribution increases. So the mandatory increases in our school district assessments, not the operations assessments, but the minimum local contributions. In Assabet's case, it would reduce Berlin's minimum local contribution by about $15,000.
Yeah.
The issue is that's going to come right back next year, because we'll have the minimum local contribution. It'll offset it this year, but it's going to come right back next year in addition to any minimum local contributions we see next year. So I personally didn't think, given the overall 2.03% increase that Assabet's requesting, I didn't think it would be advisable for the town to take them up on that offer, even though it was very kind of them to do that, because we're just going to see it come back next year.
Okay.
So, you know, if we can manage with the assessments that that they're proposing without having to do that, that would be my recommendation, just to try to maintain without having just to pick up that $15,000 next year in addition to whatever other increase we see next year.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful, as always, Margaret, explanation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Janet, did you have another question, or were you had your hand up before we talked about that? No. Okay. All righty. Well, I'm ready to adjourn unless anyone else has anything else. We have next week. We have who, Margaret? Is school?
Oh gosh, I don't have my sheet in front of me. Who do we have next week? Anybody have their schedule in front of us?
Is it the schools?
Not capital planning.
Oh, next week is Berlin-Boylston Regional School District. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Have they provided
that'll
us
be a first.
anything yet?
I asked them, Scott, and no, they haven't. They haven't. So I asked him I said, could you even give us maybe your Tohoto capital assessment? No, we're
Margaret, I didn't
wait
think
for it
look,
all.
but were their state revenues level funded, or were they going to be cut?
They are talking about increasing Chapter 70 revenues for school districts, but they are going to be weighed very heavily into the poorer school districts, into the school districts that have the greatest need. So we might see a little bit of a bump, but I don't think it's going to be as significant as other.
But not a
districts that-
cut, right? They're not.
I don't
cutting.
think they're not proposing cuts.
Not too bad.
All right, good. All righty.
Yeah.
Well, do I forget?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Janet.